It started as a simple holiday event, a moment of connection intended to bridge cultural divides. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, bathed in the warm light of a Hanukkah celebration, stood before a cheering crowd and proudly claimed her own Jewish heritage. The declaration was meant to inspire, to add another vibrant thread to her political tapestry. But within hours, a digital clip of that moment found its way to the screen of conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, and everything changed. The narrative was about to be hijacked. What happened next wasn't a debate, it was a reckoning, a political vivisection performed live for an audience of millions. In a matter of minutes, Shapiro's response went viral, meticulously dismantling what he called the profound hypocrisy of identity politics. By the end of the week, his words had not only shaken the foundations of Washington, but it also sent AOC's highly disciplined communications team scrambling for answers, caught completely off guard. This wasn't the triumphant moment they had planned. This was the raw, unfiltered moment they never, ever expected you to see. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell us where you're watching from, because once you hear what Shapiro said, you'll understand precisely why the mainstream media tried so desperately to bury it. It all started amid the joyful glow of a Hanukkah celebration in New York. There were warm lights, the sound of laughter, and the sharing of ancient stories of heritage and resilience. But what no one in that room could have possibly expected was for Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to step up to the microphone and drop a bombshell that would set the political world on fire. With cameras rolling and the crowd leaning in, captivated, AOC smiled a knowing smile and said, "You know, generations ago, my family discovered we had Jewish roots." The room erupted in a wave of applause. She painted a vivid picture of hidden menorahs in the back rooms of Puerto Rican homes, of families whispering sacred prayers in secret, their faith a candle against the wind. It was emotional, it was moving, it was almost cinematic. But halfway across the country, one man wasn't buying it. Ben Shapiro, watching the clip with a practiced analytical eye, saw not a heartfelt confession, but a calculated political maneuver. Within hours, his response hit the airwaves like a lightning strike. What began as a sentimental moment of cultural pride was about to explode into a national firestorm. Shapiro immediately called it out as pure political theater, accusing AOC of doing what he claimed progressive politicians do best, playing the heritage card when it's convenient and politically advantageous. And that's when everything changed. Across the vast landscape of social media, hashtags erupted like digital wildfires. Hashtag Shapiro vs AOC trended worldwide as commentators, pundits, and ordinary citizens scrambled to take sides. Was AOC genuinely celebrating her recently discovered roots, or was she cynically weaponizing her identity for political gain? Ben Shapiro's takedown wasn't just a critique, it was a masterclass in surgical precision. He drew a direct line from AOC to other prominent Democrats, like Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, politicians who, as he caustically put it, suddenly and miraculously discovered Jewish ancestry right before a crucial campaign season. His words were cold, cutting, and impossible to ignore. He said, "This isn't about heritage, it's about hypocrisy." AOC's supporters, a formidable online army, hit back immediately. They called Shapiro a traitor to his own faith, a sellout who would attack a fellow Jew for political points. But instead of backing down, Shapiro doubled down. And that's when things went from political to intensely personal. Because this was no longer just about religion. It was about truth, about public image, and about one explosive underlying question. Was AOC lying to make herself look good? And as Ben Shapiro began to pull back the curtain on what he called the ultimate progressive double standard, one thing became terrifyingly clear. This was not going to end quietly. When Ben Shapiro speaks, it's fast, sharp, and relentless, like verbal gunfire. And this time, he wasn't holding anything back. On his show, The Daily Wire, he opened with that signature smirk, the one that tells you someone's about to get intellectually demolished. Okay, he began, adjusting his mic, so apparently Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just discovered she's Jewish. Mazel tov, I guess. The audience laughed, a knowing chuckle, but then his tone shifted, becoming hard as steel. He continued, "This isn't cute. This is political theater, the same kind we've seen from Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, who found Jewish ancestry just in time to score empathy points. AOC doesn't care about Jewish heritage, she cares about optics." He paused, a calculated beat, just long enough to let that accusation land with full force, and then he went in deeper. He said, "She stands shoulder to shoulder with people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Linda Sarsour, women who have built their entire careers pushing anti-Israel rhetoric and defending the anti-Semitic BDS movement. You don't get to claim solidarity with Jews one day and support the people actively boycotting the Jewish state the next. That's hypocrisy, full stop." Shapiro's monologue sliced through the political noise like a scalpel. Every word was calculated, every example precise and damning. The audience, millions watching live, knew they were witnessing a classic Shapiro takedown. But AOC's camp didn't stay silent long. Within hours, her spokesperson fired back online, calling Shapiro the quintessential Uncle Tom of Jews. They accused him of being morbidly obsessed with AOC, of using her name for cheap attention and clicks. The insult was designed to hit hard, to sting. But instead of reacting with emotion, Shapiro did something that stunned even his most ardent critics. He smiled. "Ah," he said on his next broadcast, a calm and knowing look on his face. "The left doesn't debate, they deflect. When they can't counter your argument, they attack your character. It's their playbook, and frankly, I'm not playing along." Then, with the calm, methodical precision of a trial lawyer laying out his case, he restated his challenge. "AOC, I will give $10,000 to a charity of your choice. Come debate me. No gotchas, no ambushes. Just ideas." The offer was real. The challenge was public. But AOC's response was a single, dismissive tweet, accusing Shapiro of catcalling. Catcalling. The word echoed across the internet, a bizarre and ill-fitting accusation. Commentators laughed. Even Shapiro chuckled on air, saying, "I'm not an expert, but I don't think catcalling is in the Orthodox Jewish playbook." But beneath the surface-level humor, a deeper and more significant current was forming. This was no longer just a clash of political ideologies. It was something bigger, a symbolic battle between the fluid nature of identity politics and the hard, unyielding demand for accountability. And as the media frenzy grew louder, Ben Shapiro began preparing his next move, a direct, on-air message to AOC that would leave millions speechless. The next morning, Shapiro's light studio blazed to life. Cameras zoomed in. The set was quiet, but the tension was electric, palpable even through the screen. He leaned forward, hands clasped, that familiar intensity burning in his eyes. He said, "All right, let's talk about this." He said, "Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says she has Jewish heritage. Great, fantastic. I am all for people exploring their ancestry. But when that statement conveniently drops at a Hanukkah event while you simultaneously align yourself with the loudest anti-Israel voices in Congress, forgive me if I'm skeptical." He paused, letting the silence build, making the audience hang on his next word.
He declared, "This isn't about faith. It's about credibility." He gestured directly toward the camera as if speaking to every viewer individually. You don't get to claim Jewish roots for a round of applause and then stand next to activists pushing for the destruction of the world's only Jewish state. That's not pride, that's performance. The clip cut across social media within minutes. Headlines exploded. Ben Shapiro challenges AOC's faith claim on live air. Shapiro to AOC, pick a side. But this time he wasn't just commenting, he was calling her out, directly, personally. "Here's my offer again," he said, looking straight into the lens. "You pick the place, you pick the moderator. I'll put $10,000 toward any charity you choose. Let's have an honest debate. Not on Twitter, not in sound bites."
Online, the reaction was immediate. Commenters flooded social media. Shapiro just nuked the entire double standard. You don't have to agree with him to admit he's right. Meanwhile, major networks scrambled to respond. MSNBC called the segment a masterclass in spin. Fox News called it the truth the media won't touch. But what no one could deny was that Shapiro had reframed the entire debate. This wasn't about whether AOC's great-great-grandmother lit a menorah. It was about whether politicians were exploiting belief for applause. Shapiro closed the segment with a line that would echo through social media for days. Faith doesn't need politics to survive, but politics has always needed faith, because it's the easiest way to look righteous without actually being right. The audience erupted in applause. Online, thousands of comments poured in within minutes, and while AOC remained silent, Washington insiders began whispering about the fallout, because behind closed doors, her own allies were starting to ask an uncomfortable question. Had her heritage moment backfired? Shapiro, sensing blood in the water, was ready for one final push. The next episode wouldn't just dissect hypocrisy. It would call out names and force an entire movement to face its own reflection. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the camera, intense and unblinking. You can't claim solidarity with Jewish people while cheering on those who demonize the Jewish state. That's not identity, that's opportunism. The clip cut deep. Commentators replayed it endlessly. Hashtags like Pick a Side AOC and hashtag Shapiro Strikes Again trended within hours. Then Shapiro delivered the line that would define the entire moment. You don't get to say, "I have Jewish heritage," when your political friends are promoting anti-Semitic boycotts. That's like saying, "I can't be racist, I once had a black friend." The studio fell silent for a beat. Even the audience watching live online seemed to pause, collectively holding its breath. He wasn't angry, he was surgical, and that's what made it so devastating. This, he continued, his voice rising with conviction, is the left's playbook. When backed into a corner, they hide behind identity politics. They weaponize race, religion, or gender as a shield. And when you call them out on it, they cry victim. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of a smirk returning. But facts don't care about your feelings. The line landed like a thunderclap. It was vintage Shapiro, logical, relentless, and unapologetically brutal. Within hours, AOC's defenders fired back on Twitter, claiming he was twisting her words and disrespecting her heritage. But the more they attacked, the more the clip spread. Because underneath the outrage, people recognized something bigger at play. Shapiro wasn't mocking religion, he was exposing how modern politics had turned faith into a disposable prop. Even some moderate commentators had to admit it. Whether you like him or not, one journalist tweeted, Shapiro has a point. Politicians love heritage when it polls well. By the evening, the debate had spiraled into a full-blown media frenzy. Pundits clashed on primetime television. Jewish organizations weighed in. The conversation had shifted from AOC's ancestry to a far deeper and more unsettling question. When does cultural pride become cynical political manipulation? And as the world argued, Ben Shapiro sat in his studio, quietly preparing his next move, one that would turn this controversy from a viral moment into a cultural reckoning. The clip went viral immediately, not as mockery, but as a quote montage, spreading across platforms. Conservative pages called it Shapiro's sermon. Even some progressives admitted he made his point. But the real shock came the next morning, when reports surfaced that AOC had finally broken her silence with a statement that would reignite the fire all over again. It had been over a week of silence, a week of mounting headlines, online debates, and one of the most viral takedowns Ben Shapiro had ever delivered. And then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez finally responded. The statement didn't come in a press conference or a TV interview. It appeared as a long post on X, written in her signature style, emotional, eloquent, and deliberately defiant. "For those trying to twist my words or my family's history," it began, "my heritage is not a debate topic. My ancestors lived in hiding. My family's story is one of survival, not politics. If you think you can define who I am based on your political views, that says more about you than it does about me." Within minutes, the post went viral. Her supporters flooded the comments with heart emojis and messages of solidarity, but critics, led by Shapiro's audience, pounced. Shapiro, naturally, wasn't about to let that be the final word. That evening, he opened his show with the headline splashed across the screen. AOC responds, but doesn't answer. He read her post aloud, line by line, dissecting every word with surgical calm. "Notice what's missing," he said. "No mention of her support for BDS, no comment on her alliances with anti-Israel activists, no acknowledgement of the double standard, just another emotional appeal meant to deflect from the facts." He folded the paper and set it aside. "And that right there," he continued, "is the modern political formula. When you're cornered, don't answer the question. Redefine the question. When you can't win the argument, change the subject. When you're caught in hypocrisy, call it personal." Then, with the precision that had made him famous, he turned her words on their head. "AOC says her family story is one of survival. I respect that, truly. But the Jewish people's story is also one of survival. And standing with those who demonize Israel while claiming Jewish roots, that's not solidarity. That's exploitation." The studio was silent except for the low hum of the cameras. "This isn't about ancestry," he said. "It's about accountability. Because the moment you step into public office, your words matter, your alliances matter, your consistency matters. You don't get to hide behind identity when the truth knocks on your door." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper, the kind that commands attention. "Heritage is sacred. It's not a punchline. It's not a prop. And if you use it to score political points, you dishonor the very people you claim to represent." By the time he finished, the internet was on fire again. Hashtag AOC Responds was trending side by side with hashtag Shapiro Strikes Back. And though both sides claimed victory, one thing was undeniable. The entire country was now talking about sincerity, consistency, and the price of performance. Shapiro ended the episode with one final line, delivered not with anger, but with quiet conviction. "At the end of the day, heritage doesn't make you honest. Character does. And when history looks back on this moment, it won't remember who claimed what ancestry, it'll remember who told the truth." The screen faded to black, and just like that, what began as an offhand comment at a holiday event had become one of the defining cultural battles of the year, a clash between faith and politics, sincerity and strategy, and two powerful voices who refused to back down. Because in the age of outrage, the truth still has a way of echoing louder than the applause.